Sam will catch. You gonna see me fix the catch. Hey,
Oh, I thought Sheila Jones
with this,
was something.
Good afternoon. Let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and get started. The subcommittee on the road namings. I see Chairman Watson down there. You mind offering us a quick prayer? What number are you?
Let's pray. Dear Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for all your many blessings. Just ask and pray that you'll be with us during this meeting and just lead, guide, and direct us. Help us to make the right decisions for the people of the state. Just be with our families and our businesses while we're all away. Keep them safe, watch over them, and just give us all safe trips home today and tomorrow. Just thank you for everything you've given us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chairman Watson. All right. Today we're here to, the subcommittee is going to basically work on the road dedication, a couple of bridges as well, and intersections. So basically, we're going to name this house, was definitely a couple of resolutions, but it's gonna go out as House Resolution 820. That's one that our Chairman England is actually sponsoring, but they all fall up under there, and we'll just take them all as a whole. So we have a couple of, one dedication is an intersection. It's in Barrow County. Another dedication is a portion of the State Route 139. That's in Clayton County. We have another that's a portion of a State Route 54, also in Clayton County. We have a bridge to be dedicated, and that's going to be in Fulton County. Another state route on State Route 372. That's going to be in Cherokee and Pickens County, so that's going to cross over too. We also have another intersection on State Route 78, and that's going to be in Gwinnett County. Another intersection, State Route 1 in US 27, that's going to be in Floyd County. Another interchange on Interstate 575, that's in Cherokee County. Another State Route 11, and that's going to be in Walton County. We're going to dedicate a bridge on State Route 109. That's going to be in Pike County. There's another dedication in State Route 53. That's in Hall and Forsyth County. And then another dedication of a state route, a portion of a state route on State Route 26. And that's going to be in Marion County. Another intersection in State Route 8. And that's back again in Gwinnett County. Another intersection, State Route 48, and that's going to be in Chattahooga County, excuse me. A bridge in State Route 51, that's going to be in Franklin County. And another state route on State Route 211, and that's going to be in Barrow County. dedicate a portion of a State Route 144. That's going to be in Tacknell County. And then we have a couple of corrections on the resolution we've done before. Just basically a spelling of, we left out the middle initial D and Charlie D. Rogers on Memorial Highway, and then also providing a title for the dedication to the Hugh Moore Memorial Bridge and Purple Heart recipient. So this is what we have before us. Are there any questions? This is the proper time. We have a motion to do pass. It's been second. Any questions? All those in favor, say yeah. Any opposed, say nay. Thank you very much. They go on as passed. Seeing no other business before this committee, we declare adjourned and we'll move on to transportation. Thank you.
We'll take a minute before we get started. We got to get organized and sign some stuff. We have a sign-in sheet. If you want to speak during this on House Bill 469, right up there by Andres. He's working on it. Go ahead and sign in. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Bring our House Transportation Committee to order. Glad everyone's here today. Committee members, we have before us a resolution of road naming that we'll take up first. It's House Resolution 820. It was just held out of subcommittee and passed by unanimous vote. I'll call on our subcommittee chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Resolution 820, of course, is our annual road facility dedication package. We had about 19 dedications this time, a couple of bridges, a couple of intersections, and in portions of different state routes. As mentioned earlier, it did come out of subcommittee unanimous and recommend that we do pass in full committee.
And do pass. So thank you, Vice Chairman, for always, and most always we thank Miss Abby Day for her work on this, coordinating with 180 House members and getting the advertisements and in the paper and getting to you in appropriate time is always easy.
It's so easy.
It's easy.
It doesn't stress me out at all.
So we've got a House Resolution 820. We got to move, do pass. Need a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye. Any opposed? We're done. That one's through. There'll be a lot of 19 people going to get reelected now, right? Is that how that works?
I don't
Yeah. Well, oh yeah. Thank you, Chairman. You're right.
know
Sure.
about that Chairman England. I don't know if he read,
He's not worried
I
about
don't
it,
know
is
if
he?
he's worried about it.
Well, we just really want to put his first because that's the way it'll start off, and
Exactly.
we discuss it on Tuesday. But we appreciate it. I'll take another minute and recognize, transportation budget is passed. There's just tremendous amount of work, and Chairman Perkle works on it a lot, but our analyst, Miss Abby Day, works on it a tremendous amount. And if you were in transportation appropriations this morning and you listened to Chairman Perkle go back and forth in budget line items, Miss Abby, you coached him well. It was really interesting and really neat to hear. And I sure appreciate the work you do in doing that. And Chairman Perkle really makes a big difference. Well, I know our good crowd here is to hear Chairman Burchett's House Bill 469, and I'll call on 215. Yeah, let's do 215. Well, hey, we're just gonna. Yeah, me too. Yeah, you go ahead. I've got it too. Oh, it did say 2:30. So our meeting for the Transportation Committee, we're going to be on pause for a few minutes. It says 2:30 on our announcement. We thought it was directly after this one, so we'll just have to wait. Sorry. Yeah. Well,
I'm trying to see. You can't raise my hand now until the meeting starts. Say I'm speaking. Where am I speaking at?
We don't know.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We paused there for a minute after voting out our road resolution bill. We thank you for being here. I know you're a busy guy with judiciary non-civil. There's no telling what good things you're doing down there. Whoops, I'm sorry. There you go.
For hearing this bill. I want to personally thank you. I know this issue is not a new issue. This is an issue that we've continued to talk about and have a conversation about. I think, it's a tough issue. It's not easy on either side. And so I want to personally thank you and the committee members for the due diligence and the consideration, the fair consideration of this measure. If it's your will, Mr. Chairman, I'll just briefly say what the bill is. I think everybody on the committee knows what the bill is. We had a lengthy subcommittee hearing in front of Vice Chairman Wiedauer. And then for the essence of time, you can start bringing the folks up if that's what you like.
Yes, sir.
What we have before you again is House Bill 496. This is a truck weights bill to increase the weight for what trucks can carry in the state of Georgia. The changes that have come about since the subcommittee meeting, the material changes are that we have put a sunset provision in this bill so that it will be repealed in July 1, 27. So we can have the data necessary to figure out what the real on the ground impact is of these weights. The other provision is the original bill had 95,000 pounds. We have reduced that without any concessions from the opposition. The opposition is there's really no, for the folks that are opposed to this, there is no compromise position. And it's not because they don't want to negotiate. They can't, because they are the stewards of our roads and bridges. So they can't say, we'll go to this or we'll go to that. I acknowledge that. And so, but without even, anyone asking, we moved down to 90,000 pounds with a 2.5% variance. And let me tell you something about the variance. The variance is important because we're not building a block. We're not building a widget. We're not loading that onto a ship or a truck every day. There's variances in the wood. There's denser wood and denser materials. And then if anybody knows anything about the logging industry, most of these trailers are made up and they'll sit out overnight. So if they cut dry wood and it rains for 8 hours, there's going to be a significant increase in the weight. So one log doesn't weigh the same as another log. I know this is not just strictly towards forestry. It has ag in it, but that's why the variance is in it. And those are pretty much the changes from what the bill was. As we started out with this bill, the idea was to codify the executive order. We're traveling currently under an executive order since August, I think 31st of 21 of 95,000 pounds. And that's extended to every industry. No provisions that say no trucks can move except these industries. Before this executive order came into session or into existence, we had a hurricane event. The executive order was used. We had a fire in 13. Executive order was used. We had a fire in 07. The executive order was used. And I only say that to say this. This is not temporary. This is consistently used so that we can haul more weight. The industry, we're in unprecedented times. We got inflation that's skyrocketing. I drive a diesel. Diesel is $6 a gallon, and that's a $200 bill for my truck. Now consider that for these large semis at already narrow margins, and with labor issues, the industry is literally hanging by a thread. And this is a provision that would help them to continue to move forward. And I'm gonna shut up here in 1 second, but because I said it was gonna be quick, but you know, a politician lawyer thing that works out not well for everybody. And I'm not even getting to bill for this. What is government's role, right? I immensely respect Commissioner of GDOT. Had a conversation with him about this, and I think he would probably even tell you he comes from a logging background. And I respect his position on this, as I do ACCG and GMA's position. But our role is to grow with Georgia. We're you know, if it takes building heavier, putting more GAB, more asphalt on the roads to carry what the industries and economics of Georgia is growing, it's our role to do that. And if that means building heavier bridges, that's what we should do. And in conversations with Commissioner Mcmurray, I acknowledge that if we were to get this measure across the finish line at some point, then we have to look at the backside. We'd have to appropriate funds for the bridges. We have to appropriate funds for the roads. And with that, I'm gonna rest, Your Honor, and you can call the witnesses as long as I can treat them.
Well, I just want to say, Chairman, you've been great to work with. I know you and I've had many a discussion, you know, and I think committee members, I think that's the neat thing about what we do. And we sometimes forget it. You know, I just knew Chairman Burchett not well. We know each other well now, don't we?
Yes, we do.
And I think that's something we forget here sometimes, is our just getting to know people, the real issues. And I appreciate you, Chairman, and working with me and the committee on this. So does anybody have any questions for Chairman Burchett right now? We will come back to him at the end or toward the end. I see none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Also, committee, you know, we had some issues about who's on the committees and who isn't. Back a little while ago, Casey Carpenter, Mr. Carson are on our committee. They weren't on the last sheet that went out, but you may know on a house rule is that you cannot be removed from a committee unless you request. And I don't think I got a request that you came off this committee. Absolutely not. Casey, what about you?
I did. I thought I was getting the MTG play.
Oh, you know. Yeah, no, well, you know. But with that, you know, but I just want to make sure everybody knew that and I recognize them. So we'll turn it over. We'll just kind of go down the line. You know, Andres with Georgia Forestry, if you'll be first up. And I just want to see he's getting ready, committee. I mean, this is your chance. I mean, if there's something that's bitter, I mean, this is where we get to ask questions. And I hope that you're not, you know, I've had the luxury of asking questions for the last 3 days. I hope that you take time, if you have one, that you'll ask any of these speakers a question today. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the community. It's a committee. It's an honor to be with you today again. And I certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this very, very critical issue that affects the second largest industry in the state of Georgia to the tune of about $39 billion of economic activity every year. I'm the president and CEO of the Georgia Forestry Association. I have the pleasure to be in that role over the past 7 years. And there's been one thing that's been consistent on my radar, and it's been this issue of truck weights and really more so competitiveness. You know, when I came into this role, we commissioned a study at the University of Georgia to look at the increasing cost of insurance rates for log trucks and heavy trucks that are out on the road. We saw that, and then we also understood that there was a lot of issues with labor. So we started commissioning studies around labor. We started working on different ways, and we commissioned a study also at the University of Georgia to look at different truck configurations, ways that we could reduce the impacts on our roads while also increasing the weight of our trucks to make us more competitive. You'll see a map in front of you that shows how we are uncompetitive versus other states. On the back of that map, you'll see the table that breaks that down, that information down more distinctly by both gross and total weight allowed, to provide a little bit more detail, as well as per axle weights as well. We've done all this work because we wanted to avoid where we are today. We saw this coming a long time ago, and simply stated, COVID greatly accelerated the situation that we're in today, which is a situation of a crisis. The highest fuel prices that we've seen in our industry, the highest labor costs that we've seen, the highest insurance costs that we've seen, coupled with a lack of labor. So it doesn't matter what you pay. Sometimes you can't even find the drivers, or a lot of times you can. And an economy that's still in overdrive, an economy that needs our trees to make diapers and lumber for our homes, which is also seems to be in short supply, but also the face masks and the coverings on the Tylenol pills that are going throughout this entire world. The world depends on Georgia forestry. We are not only the #1 forestry state in the nation, but we're also a powerhouse across the world, supplying a lot of the exports that leave from the state. We're the #1 exporter of forest products from the United States, supplying very important countries all over the world and helping balance out a lot of the trade that we have in the U.S. From the U.S. and also from our state and our port. But one of the most important things we can do is if we cannot move timber efficiently, then we can't monetize that for the 400,000 plus landowners that are out there in the state of Georgia that have decided to grow a tree and wait 30 years or 25 years to be able to monetize that investment. We can't feed the mills that are in this state that generate about 45,000 direct employees and about 44,000 indirect employees, total employment across the state too as well. It all comes down to be able to not only plant, but sever and deliver a tree into our economy that turns into the things that we depend on every day. It's part of our survival, our comfort, and our progress. And so that's why we're asking for your support today. You'll hear from a lot of other folks too as well. What I do want to say is that when this bill was heard last Thursday, I did not expect to be back here this Thursday. There's been it accelerated greatly. There was a lot of interest. You heard from some of my members who are pleading for your support, who are at the edge of whether or not their industry is going to, their businesses that have been around for multiple generations, multiple decades, of whether or not those businesses are going to be here this time next year. And so because of that, we know that this is a very, very critical decision that you have to make. And the path forward for us is very important. And we've had some very constructive discussions with many of you on the committee. And we know that there's a lot left to do. The bill is good and our estimation is great, but it's also, there's a lot left and it can be perfected in multiple different ways. A lot of discussion left, and we hope that we'll have that opportunity to move forward with this bill and also have the opportunity to perfect it as we as time goes on. So with that, I'll leave it at that. But just know that we are facing a challenge that we've never seen before in the state's forest economy. And there's a lot of people in the state and outside of the state that depend on our success. Thank you very much.
Committee, any questions for our friend? I see none. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gillis from Gillis Ag and Timber. We appreciate you coming up again this week.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for your time. And I appreciate each and every one of the members of the committee and y'all allowing me to come back. And I really appreciate this opportunity because I feel like somebody heard me last week. You know, my name's Ben Gillis. I'm from Soperton, Georgia. I own and operate a family business that we've had in my family since the 50s. And currently we're running 30 logging crews supplying pulp and paper mills with raw product, as well as saw mills and chip mills and pellet mills. Currently with the 30 operators that I have, I'm moving somewhere around 1,200 loads of logs a week. Right now we're dealing with the after effects of a pandemic and looks like we're going into another pandemic. Yesterday, I was up here trying to have conversations with people about how important this is to my family, to me, the people that depend on me for a living, and my industry and my community as well. And the whole time I'm up here, every one of my producers is sending me a text. Hey, you know, fuel's at $5.15 for off-road fuel and $5.65 for road fuel. You know, how can I hang on? Tuesday, I was in Emmanuel County meeting with one of my producers, and, you know, he looked at me, he said, you know what? He said, Ben, I'm 2 weeks from either bankruptcy or making it. And he said, you know, I don't know what we're going to do. And I said, well, all I know is to continue to fight. We're going to figure this out. with the inflationary pressures that we've experienced through COVID, anything from the equipment that we utilize all the way down to the oil that goes in the chainsaw or the chain itself or the parts, the labor, everything's gone up by anywhere between 30 and 50%. And it's not sustainable. And the only thing that we've been able to lean on is the lifeline that the governor has given us with this 95,000 pound gross vehicle weight that's allowed us to carry more volume and, allowed these guys to actually bring home more money because of that volume. If we go back to 80,000 pounds, then, with the stroke of a pen, that volume's gone and that money's gone. And these guys are struggling right now with the fuel pressures that we have. I mean, that's not the right answer, in my opinion. This is going to affect people's families, people's lives, people's businesses, and communities in rural Georgia. And the timber business depends on Georgia in order to thrive. And I just appreciate everybody listening to what we have to say. For those of you that weren't here last week, or that with my business, each and every one of these crews moves an average of 50 loads a week. If we go back to 80,000 pounds, every one of those crews has got to move another 15 loads of wood that week in order to make that volume up. And, our ports are growing at a high rate of speed because we've been able to, to react to the demands that they've had on the labor. On our ability to get in bigger ships and offload them and get them to market. And anyhow, with the more containers coming in, they're hiring the drivers and they're picking us off, and we're collateral damage. Last Thursday I came and spoke, and that Thursday on the way up, one of those logging producers lost trucks to the container business. They all put their 2 weeks notice in and said, "Hey, look, I'm tired of fighting it. I'm going to pull containers." They have lower levels of entry. In order to pull wood, you've got to have 2 years experience. If you don't have 2 years experience, the underwriters sometimes will insure you with a decent driving record, but they do charge you anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000, $11,000 I've even heard, in order to be insured. To haul containers, $300 a month at the max, $100 max is all they've got to pay. We're having to pay $1,000 to $3,000 in insurance premiums a month in order to pull logs. So, and the container guys, they can pull heavier weights than we can. Right now we're at 95, they can do 100 with a bill of lading. And, if we go back to 80, it's just going to put more pressure on us. These mills need our products. Nobody in the timber industry can get paid unless that tree can be cut and converted into something that we can use and sell. And, loggers are a necessary part of the timber industry in Georgia. And, if these mills can't get the products that we can provide because I can't find drivers, what do? I assume they carry their business to another state that has different policy. I don't know, but that doesn't include me, and that doesn't help my family, exist tomorrow. So I'm scared for my future. The people that work under me are scared for their future. We don't know how we're going to get out of this, but the fact that y'all are considering helping us with these truck weights, I greatly appreciate it. I appreciate the time that you've given me today. And, thank you again. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you, Mr. Gillis. My question just is on insurance. So it's amazing, I'm sure, what you pay, but over the last 5 years, you give me just a general idea of what you're having to pay 5 years ago to today in insurance. Is it just wild?
We have an insurance guy that came with us that actually most of his business comes from the timber industry. He'd probably be better suited to answer that question.
Well,
if that's okay.
is he signed up to speak?
No, sir, I'm sorry, but he knows more about it than I do. I would say.
Well, I'm going to put him down here toward the end. Is that all right with you?
Yes, sir.
What's his name, Mr. Gillis?
Scott Copeland.
Scott Copeland.
Yes, sir. He's with
Scott, do you mind
Gutham and
talking
Elam
for a minute?
Insurance.
Okay.
Is that okay with you, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
He probably have better information for you.
You can go ahead and right now if you want to, Mr. Copeland, or do you need to think about it a minute? Would you be okay to do right now, or do you want to wait a minute? Go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Committee, well, okay, we'll just pause just a minute. Does any member have a question for Mr. Gillis. Anybody online? No, ma'am. Okay. Yeah. Vice Chairman Weedower does have a question for you, Mr. Gillis.
Yes, sir.
Do you have, good to see you again. Thank you for making the trip.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk to how much in local sales tax you pay as you sever the severance tax, dollar amounts that kind of go to some of these local municipalities?
Oh, gosh,
that might
Each one
associate-
of these municipalities has a different millage rate. Oh, gosh, as far as timber produced, I operate in East Georgia, so all the way from Hart County down to McIntosh County. I think in sales, this year so far, I've done $63 million in sales in my business. And, as far as how much tax that produces, each one of the millage rates is different. What is it? Around 3%? Is that not correct? Every time that we cut a tract of timber, that money is severed. There's a severance tax that goes with it. We also pay taxes on the equipment. So each one of these logging crews, whether it's $1 million, $2 million, $5 million worth of equipment, they're paying ad valorem tax every year on it as well. Landowners that are growing the trees, they're paying ad valorem tax on that land and every year to grow that timber. As far as an exact number, I'd have to get back with you. But
We'd say it's significant, would you not?
and I'm a small part of the business. I mean, I'm really a small part. So the industry, I mean, that'd be significant. It really would. I hate I can't answer the question any better than that, but
That's all right. Thank you.
yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Copeland, you would like to add a little bit on the insurance side.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to be here today. The question you had was how much has the increase in 5 years? It's about 33% for the last 5 years. And that, I figured that per truck. That's the easiest way for me to figure an increase like that. Part of the problem, what's driving insurance rates now is inflation, cost to repair vehicles, and the value of the vehicles also. So that's a lot of the problem. It's not, historically, there's been 1 in 10.5 to 11.5 trucks per year would have some kind of incident. That's in the forestry industry, and it's been consistent for the last 20 years.
What was that number? Pardon me, what was that number again?
1 in 10.5 to 11.5 trucks per year
Okay,
would have some kind of incident where not at fault or at fault. We don't track that.
yes, sir. Number 11, Mr. Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. You said out of every 10 or 11
Yeah.
trucks.
Yes, sir.
Did you see an increase over the last 2 years?
No, sir, not at all. I'm in a group of forestry agents across the Southeast, and we have a call every other week or so, and we discuss that kind of information. And there's not been any significant increase in the amount of claims. It's been that for the last 20 years.
Hey, thank you.
Yes,
That's
sir.
perfect. Next will be Lance Hooks. Then after Lance will be Emily Ham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, member of the House. I'm Lance Hooks. I serve as the County Commission Board Chairman down in Shreveport County. Really appreciate what y'all doing in hearing this. Down in my area, forestry is real big for us. It's kind of one of the big things that drives our economy. And as well as y'all, we have a member of fiduciary. And you're going to hear from a lot of, y'all probably have heard, we come up, all the commissioners come up yesterday and, it reached out to different things that's going on in bills. But, it's real easy to sit in here and serve and just throw something on the road that's kind of hard at times. The first thing you're going to say, well, they're going to tear our roads up. Well, that's not, to me, being thebeneficiary for my area, because you got to look past the big picture and see how important it is to every aspect. There's many members that we have a void down in our area since we left our ag, and forestry is what we have left. And it's going to be, we welcome our port. We're glad to have our port, but it's like being said, it's really pulling off on our labor pool. And, if you can grow the best trees in the world, and just like he said, Ben give an excellent, speech of everything, the numbers and the facts behind it. But if you don't have these guys and, take it where they're can compete at the marketplace to have this, then, we're going to be looking for something else to do to help fund our people to have jobs and to have commerce. And it's really going to create a vacuum for us, because we are on the cusp of having to have something else to fill this void, because this workplace is really hurting us. And I welcome you to come down our way if we get a chance. But, used to, you see trucks parked out, staged out to go to the mills all the time. And you're not seeing that. Now you're seeing trucks parked with driver wanted signs on the front of it. They're looking for somebody to put in these trucks so they can keep going on and keep our industry going. But I felt like I should come speak at it also because, we permit these guys. We know where they're at in our counties. We know our roads. And, with a little work with them, I think we can work to do the things that are needed to make this bill be successful and help our industry out.
Any members have a question for Commission Chairman? Vice Chairman Weedower.
Again, I always say this when I start, I appreciate you being up here because, a lot of times we get thousands of emails about stuff, but having people in front of us is always enjoyable and hearing their perspective. So I appreciate you being here.
Yes, thank you.
Do you feel like there's a balance between, I seem like I'm probably kind of harping on the same things here, but the taxes and the use of those tax dollars?
Ask me that again now.
Taxes you're paying and the use of those dollars. and what they
Taxes
go
I'm
towards.
paying.
Well, I think what we're thinking, maybe if I jump in there,
Sure.
is like, the taxes brought into your community
Yes,
from
sir.
forestry
Yes, sir.
or minerals
Yes,
in
sir.
your county
Yes, sir.
specifically, is there a balance of what you're able to do to maintain your roads and,
The LMIG program that y'all send down, that comes down to wherever you use and the T-Splash and stuff, they're really important, and they really help us a lot in a small rural county. And we don't have, the different industries, we don't have a lot going on. So, this severance tax and stuff that we do receive and does come in, it helps. But, without what we're receiving from the state level, we would really be in trouble without that. And it really helps us. But, it's going to be tough, when you take the number 2 industry that's in our state. And, these guys are sitting here and it's not profitable to do that anymore. There's no sense even having trees, because you can grow the best in the world, but if you don't have the workforce, and it's not economical feasible for these guys to get out every day at 5 o'clock in the morning to climb in these trucks and to go down to that mill when they can go. And listen, I love the pork. I'm on the interstate. I want to see the pork grow, but it's really going to hurt this pool just because we're dealing with this workforce. I mean, Ben gave y'all a perfect example. I mean, he's more of a better speaker than I am. He put all the numbers to it. I mean, he's on his game, but it's really important to us. And I just wanted to come speak as me being from South Georgia. I've been in the forestry business for 20 years. I also serve just like y'all, and I have people that I have to answer to and be fiduciary with funding. But at the end of the day, if you take the football away, there ain't no game. And that's what we're looking at down there, because our ag's gone basically where I'm at. There's some ag, and y'all know what ag is in South Georgia, but in our area, our ag is growing these trees. So we're tree farmers, and we need some help to stay in the forefront with everyone else with what's going on. Because if you don't grow, you die. And we want to grow too.
Commissioner, you have a couple of questions. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I missed part of the meeting in another committee, and I was very interested in this subject, and maybe I would be in better position to ask this to Mr. Gillis, but you might be able to answer it. Are you indicating to me that the difference in the weight that you're now allowed and where you want to be is going to do that much to save your industry
Yes, sir, come on.
what does it do?
Yes, sir. What it does is it makes being our drivers able to get in that truck and make a living and support his family every day. He has to be able to do that. And when it gets to the point when he can't do that, when he can go down to the port and climb in a truck and he don't have to get up at 5 o'clock every morning to make ends to meet, that he's not making, he's right now, without this weight variance, he's behind, he's handcuffed. He's behind what everyone else is able to do it as far as turning a profit because of the, the nature of the game of how the difference of hauling wood down there compared to going down there and just hooking to something that's easier. You never go off the road. You know, you don't have to go off on in the logging woods and words and stuff like that. And then, you know, that comes into it too, where it's just a harder game to, it's a harder job to start with. And you have to have something to make it where these guys can make the money to get in there and make them want to go drive these trucks, because if not, they park in these trucks and they're going and grabbing these container trucks. And it's hurting our industry because we're not getting our products.
Okay.
Able to get our products to the meat.
I want to follow up, Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yes, sir.
I live in rural Georgia. I live
Yes,
in logging country. Not nearly probably as much. I don't have a player down there quite.
Yes.
Pair of tongs and half the loading done by hand on short pulpwood before I started taking the long log. So a little bit about it, but it's a terrible situation. The economies, the scale, and I see these containers running up and down the road, and people are going to naturally gravitate to where they can make more money. That's the beauty of the American system. He left Aunt Sally's place to go to work for McDonald's because Aunt Sally was paying $2.25 an hour.
Yes, sir.
And so that's just part of it. I really want to know and get a better feel for, is this going to, I see what you're saying, but for the guy who's driving the truck,
Yes, sir.
is this going to be a game changer by increasing the weight? I'm trying to find the benefit to the employee by the weight change.
What's the number on taking the 7.5 tons off the truck out of his checking account?
I don't mind a bit. It's chairman's call. I'm
Sure,
going one
Mr.
day to be
Gillis.
there, but
He has these numbers. Take the floor.
Thank you. To answer your question, all right, so right now we're able to haul 95,000 pounds with the governor's executive order.
Oh.
Okay, it's been our lifeline because of the increased costs with, inflation, with the equipment, labor, materials, parts, fuel, oil, all these other things. So in a 50 load a week logging crew, if you go from 95,000 pounds back to 84,000 pounds in dollars and cents for each one of those crews, that's $4,000 a week. The stroke of the pen is gone. The only way to make it back up is to hire more drivers and haul more loads to make that volume back up, because you can't haul as much on a single truck. For each one of those 50 load a week crews, that's 15 loads. We can't find the drivers because we're getting pulled. All our drivers are leaving us and going to pull containers, or they're going to other industries that may be paying better wages. We're trying to compete. Every time we go up on wages, they go up on wages. And it's like Commissioner Hook said as well, our business isn't an easy business. Millennials don't want to get in a log truck because you have to work very hard to make a living. And the people that are doing it, they've been doing it a long time. And frankly, there are other opportunities out there, absolutely. But the ones that have been doing it, it's all they know. And then most of them are connected to families. You have family owned logging crews and, somebody's brother, cousin, communities, people they grew up and they're all close knit and they're trying to work together to help one another make a living. But when these people do live, and the crew that I was talking to earlier in the week that said he had 2 weeks either to file bankruptcy or make it, one of the drivers that he lost was a brother-in-law. And he said his brother-in-law came to him and he said, "Hey, look, I can't do it anymore. I'm struggling. The container business is an easier business to do it for me to make a living. I'm sorry, I love you, but I got to do what I got to do. And these drivers aren't out. I mean, there are no other drivers to replace them. We're dealing with a limited labor pool during this COVID thing. Everybody went home and nobody came back to work. And to find somebody to replace that driver you leave or lose, we can't find them. I mean, that same guy has 4 logging crews for me. One logging crew was already at home because he couldn't find the drivers to run that logging crew. And then last week, when he lost those additional trucks, he had to shut down another crew. And, we just can't find the drivers.
What do you pay drivers?
Sir?
What do you pay drivers? That's my final question. What's the
okay.
pay of a driver?
Everybody pays them different. So some drivers are paid after fuel as the gross of the truck. So some logging crews pay them like after fuel. So if that truck grosses, just say $6,000 and the fuel bill was $2,000, then they just split what's left. The driver gets, his 2,000, and the logging contractor that owns the truck takes 2,000. Out of that 2,000, that logging contractor has to pay his debt service, his insurance, his maintenance, and his anything else that's associated with it. And if you have a boo-boo, then he's got to repair that off of it, any repairs. So these drivers, they're making good money. I mean, somebody to pull a container or even log truck drivers, they're kind of the ones that are dictating what we do today because they're in so limited a supply. A good driver that wants to work hard, he can make anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 a week. So, I mean, a good driver can make $100,000. Now he's going to have to work and work hard, and then you'll have other drivers that, maybe their work ethic isn't quite as good or the need for money isn't quite as high. So yeah, he may make $1,200, $1,500 a week and so forth. I've heard of drivers making $2,300 a week. So, they're good paying jobs. And the reason they are is because we're forced to pay them whatever they want to pay. That logger that had that truck that had to split after fuel, he doesn't have enough money to really, to make anything on that truck. He's just holding on. The only reason he's doing that is to keep that driver so that driver can pull that volume for his logging crew so that his logging crew can make money. Because if every driver he loses, that's volume he loses. And that's money that logging crew loses. So it's kind of a vicious situation to be in. We're all kind of, held at these drivers really, and they're in shortage and they're dictating what we have to pay and what we don't have to pay.
Okay, we got another question
Yes,
from
sir.
Representative Hawley.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
You want for the commission chairman? Okay, sure.
Okay.
And online, Representative Singleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just, I've got a father-in-law and a grandmother that were both drivers and a really good friend that owns and operates his own trucks. And so I just want to make sure that, and the presenter can correct me if I'm wrong, but there seems to be still a little bit of confusion on the compensation model. But an easier way to think about it for me is an hourly employee. Sorry, can you hear me? My phone is cutting in and out.
You're fine. We can hear you.
Yes, sir. Sorry. An hourly employee, if you were to cut their revenue 10%, because, if you're working at McDonald's, it's a horrible analogy, but they produce less hamburgers, it doesn't affect their salary. But for these guys, it's weight and distance when they're moving this stuff around. And for the trucking industry, especially, a 10% cut in weight, it doesn't necessarily, it translates to a 10% cut in revenue, but the capital expense doesn't go down. A lot of the overhead and the insurance expenses don't go down. So it's actually greater than a 10% cut in profit. And I think that's something that we really have to be aware of when we're talking about going from 95 to 90. Even that is a significant hit on the revenue stream in the industry.
He's correct. And thank you for that. Absolutely. And another thing too, for our trucks and our guys, the further you got to haul that product, we're still limited with drivers. So the further you haul it, the longer it takes to make that trip. And it really costs you in production. And we can't make that up by finding other drivers. So, I mean, these guys are really fighting to stay alive.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gillis.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Ham has been standing in the back because she was next. Thank you. And after her will be Mike Giles from Georgia Poultry. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Emily Ham. I'm with West Rock Company. We're a paper and packaging global leader headquartered here in Metro Atlanta. We are also members of the Georgia Paper and Forest Products Association, which represents 9 different paper and forest products manufacturers and timber companies based in the state. There are 22 different facilities that stand to receive fiber that would benefit from this, and GPFPA has been supportive throughout the process. We appreciate the committee's consideration to bring this bill back to continue the debate. A very lively debate. I will add, we appreciate that. And thank you again, Chairman Burchett, for your continued tenacity on this issue. At the end of the day, where we're at is that any improvement in efficiency and productivity really does make a difference at the end of the day for these mills that receive these raw forest products. West Rock, personally, I have mills in neighboring states, so parity. You guys who have spoken with me have heard the difference that we're looking at is a significant difference just to be able to have more efficient truck movements across state lines. The maps that are in play, West Rock is pulling over 3 million tons a year out of the state of Georgia into both Florida and Alabama. That's 125,000 truck trips. So a small improvement there is a real big difference in terms of fewer truck trips that are on the road that are required to haul the same amount of raw materials. I will say too, that in terms of safety, I know this question has come up in some of my private conversations and in previous iterations of this bill. What we're looking at is at the mill front, and this has been in place since before this bill was debated. This has been in place without any type of leaning on from any state regulatory agency, but our mills want to do the right thing. We don't want to encourage any bad behavior. We certainly don't want to encourage anyone to break the law when they show up at our gates with heavy loads. So we have numerous different companies have policies in place to measure as they come across the scale, and the loggers and the providers are punished. I can't go into details on what West Rock does specifically, but we have means of deterring this type of behavior financially and economically. And we have seen movement in that front to encourage better behavior and adherence to laws, because all of our companies, we're publicly traded. We are looking at safety goals that we all have stated, and being safe at the mill, at the gate, as products from our vendors and our suppliers are arriving are part of that measurement. So again, appreciate the continued debate on this. It is something that is absolutely critical as our industry, even before the pandemic, was fraught with the driver shortage. We're talking about drivers that are in their 50s and 60s and 70s. We're talking about an industry that is not as attractive as we might want it to be for younger people to venture into. So anything that we can do that will increase productivity, increase efficiency for these deliveries right now will absolutely move the needle. I'm happy to try and answer any questions you might have. I appreciate your consideration. And that's what I have.
For Ms. Emily, any questions from the committee? Thank you, Ms. Ham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mike Giles. After him will be Lee Lemke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, it's a pleasure to be with you here today. My name is Mike Giles. I represent the Georgia Poultry Federation. Georgia is the largest poultry producing, broiler producing state in the nation, and it has an economic impact in the state of Georgia, a little over $40 billion annually. And Georgia is the leading poultry producing region really in the world, but certainly in the nation. Yesterday, when I was driving home, I called one of my members, the transportation manager for a company that has about 100 truck drivers normally. And just to check in, because I thought I knew what the current state of affairs was, but it reinforced how critical and important this particular issue is. The conversation I had with them, they're understaffed, just like most every poultry company operating in the state. They can use more drivers. We know that, but the overall system is stressed at this point for a number of reasons. And this is one. I started thinking, we presented in this committee many times over the years, and I wanted to present it in a little different way this time, and maybe it will help demonstrate why this is so important. In 2016, when a similar bill was before this committee, actually in that case it was proposing to go to 88,000 pounds. We asked for a study to be done. Georgia Tech Research Institute conducted that study, and we estimated the number of trips that were made annually and how many could be saved just with that 4,000 pound difference, 84 to 88. At that time, the difference, the savings would be about 100,000 trips. Now with this slightly larger weight limit that would be contemplated in this bill and the growth of our industry, we're looking at about 150,000 trips annually that we could save in the poultry industry. So what I'd like to speak to is, what are the impacts of a trip not taken, a trip saved? The first, very important in our industry, is environmental sustainability. If you look at poultry industry's record since the 1960s to today, it takes to produce 1 pound of chicken, it takes 39% less fossil fuels and 36% less emissions of greenhouse gases. And those are because of efficiency, evolution, and technology. And that relates to what we're talking about today. I'm not aware of any single policy decision that this legislature could make that would decrease the amount of greenhouse gas emissions immediately or over a relatively short term than adopting, codifying this weight increase. So environmental sustainability, very important to us as an industry and to our consumers, and this would have a dramatic impact on that. I hear myself. I feel like I'm called into a radio show. I can turn your radio off. The second area is in workforce. Clearly, we all know, it's been well documented how difficult it is to attract and retain truck drivers. Enabling us to carry more on a single load would mean that we could have fewer drivers. But I certainly don't see any layoffs coming if a bill like this was passed because of turnover and other issues long term. This would enable us to address that workforce shortage very effectively. The next is safety. Been a lot of discussion on that. Back in 2016, we actually did a study ourselves and compared North Carolina, which is at 90,000 pounds and had been, I think, for 3 years at that time, to Georgia's accident record. And we, for poultry companies, and we were evaluating over 60 million miles traveled. And what we learned was the incidence of accidents were actually slightly better in North Carolina at the 90,000 pound limit compared to our 84,000 pounds. So we don't see in actual on the ground data. We'd like to update that now, but actual on the ground data, we don't see a statistical difference in accidents at that time, North Carolina compared to Georgia. Also on safety, if you don't make a trip, you're not going to have an accident. So all those 150,000 trips that would be saved, there's no chance for an accident on those trips, obviously. Secondly, on safety, this law, this code section that provides the waiver, I tried to look it up. I was on my phone just to see when it was first passed, but I believe it was in the 1990s when one first version of this waiver passed, moving it to 84,000 pounds. And truck technology has changed dramatically over that time. That means better brakes, automatic transmissions, electronics, warning systems in the cabs. I was talking to our member yesterday, and he was explaining how the technology has certainly changed over the last 20 years. So that is a positive safety factor as well. Clearly, competitive efficiency. We're surrounded by states that have higher weight limits. Our members travel back and forth carrying loads of feed or chickens, and we have to adhere to the Georgia weight as compared to the higher weight limit, and so it reduces our efficiency. And then the last, which I know is important to everybody, we utilize the roads, and our partners in local and state government are charged with protecting it and maintaining it. But when a trip isn't taken, that offsets the normal wear and tear that happens over time. Now, we could probably debate how much it offsets it, but the Georgia Tech study I mentioned earlier, and I can share that with you after we update it, demonstrated that it offset it in a significant way. So a trip not taken is going to offset the normal wear and tear that the higher weight limits would cause. So in those 5 areas, a trip that isn't taken has significant positive impacts for the environment, for our workforce, for our efficiencies, and so, Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll close, and glad to answer any questions you might have.
So, Mike, I'd love to see the report from Georgia Tech. I haven't seen it yet, and I'd like to see. And so you're going to ask them to update.
Yes, sir. Our industry has grown about 5% since that time, and then obviously we're looking at the difference between 84 and 88 to 90 is a 50% increase.
Okay.
So I'll be glad to share that with you.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Have members, Representative Thomas.
Thank you.
Yes,
Glad to
sir.
have you here today.
Yes, sir.
I heard you make a comment about North Carolina at 90,000 pounds.
That's correct.
Is that including the variance or not?
No, it's just a straight 90,000
Okay.
pound.
What about here in Georgia? What's our weight here in Georgia?
The limit under code is 80,000, but for certain commodities, most of what are represented by the people who are testifying today, the variance is 5%, which takes you to 84,000.
Okay, thank you.
Number 15, is that Snibowitz? Yes, ma'am.
So the GTRI study you referenced, and I appreciate that, and I look forward to reviewing that study, but that is just referring to poultry. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So that's not considering what my understanding is, then that's not taking into consideration what would happen if we raise the rates on just the poultry, not forestry, not mining, not all these other things, right?
There'd be
Okay.
a much larger number
There'd be
of safe trips if all.
But also heavier trips.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
So I'm thinking about the wear and tear
Well,
and how, the study might indicate, like, it looks like the data is indicating it's offset for just poultry, but if we're talking about all of these different commodities, I feel like that's a lot of that's a lot of extra weight.
Well, I think you still, though, could apply the same concept that if you take fewer trips, regardless of what you're hauling, that you're somewhat offsetting the normal wear and tear that would come from more trips at a lower weight.
But that's not in the study.
No, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other members? Thank you, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Lee Lemke, and if your members are wondering why people are going in and out of here, there's a Ways and Means Committee going on right now, and you hear the people presenting bills or they're on Ways and Means, and you want them to go to that probably, I would imagine. Thank you, Lee.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name is Lee Lemke. I'm with the Georgia Mining Association. I don't have a lot of other comments because so many of them already been taken, but we are in the worst logistic nightmare in a lifetime. We've never seen anything like it, from the ports to the employment problems to the supply chain, from trying to get our trucks to try to get any equipment, things that break on vehicles and stuff. The whole supply chain has had many, many problems. For the past year, we've worked with the forestry and the poultry and the ag group and listened to the problems that we've had with transportation. And we are in support of what this bill's doing. And I want to also say that we applaud our DOT. We have the best roads in America. I mean, everyone I talk to all over, no one has better roads, and we all care about those roads. But we are in quite a unique situation right now. And in my opinion, this is what you all can do. You can make a difference, and you can help solve the problem by looking at this bill and recognizing that it's going to help people. And that's, to me, what your job is. And that's basically all the comments I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Lee. Next up, Mr. Ben Tarbutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm glad to be with you guys this afternoon. I'm Ben Tarbutton, Sandersville Railroad. We are the very definition of a short line railroad. We're 10 miles long. We are in Middle Georgia. We have about 12 different customers. And, this is a tough issue for me because I got friends on both sides of this. I'm a member of Georgia Forestry. I'm on the Georgia Mining Board, and I think when I leave this room, I'm going to join the Georgia Poultry Federation. I think that'll cover the gamut. But I'm on the against side of the bill, and for many reasons. And I'm not as good as some of my predecessors, but I'm going to try to go through a couple of salient points that I think you're going to care about. I have just as much a responsibility to 31 employees as some of the previous speakers. I have not only responsibility to them, but their families. And this bill, if passed, is going to hurt my business. And I'm going to tell you about that. But before I get there, I've been here countless times on the same issue. And I can't tell you how many renditions I've seen: 84,000 pounds, 88,000 pounds, 95,000 pounds, 90,000 pounds with a 2.5% variant, six axles, five axles. It doesn't change the facts. And the facts are these, that you can look at any study, whether it's AASHTO, one from GDOT, GMA, ACCG, and trucks today, especially if you look at a lot of those studies on federal routes, which is just on 80,000 pounds, they do not pay their fair share. And that is the truth at all levels. And all you're doing by increasing weights is wearing out that road quicker. And I don't care if you add a sixth axle or give a 2.5% variance, bridges cannot stand it. And I would love to hear from ACCG how many bridges are already marked for lower weights in the counties, in the 159 counties in the state of Georgia. And I bet it's a big number. So I think that we are trying to solve a problem that's going to create many more. And, other speakers I know in past have spoken to the safety side, but as a family person and father of three, I do not want to be driving down the road with a log truck that's got 4.5 tons more weight behind it. I think that's a dereliction of duty. And we're not going to solve the national workforce issue by increasing truck weights. I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. And we're talking about forestry, and we serve a chip mill in Sandersville, and it's a heck of a good customer. And if we increase truck weights for forestry, I'm going to lose that business. So how do I tell my employees that the state legislature voted on a weight increase for trucks that's going to be in competition with rail, and we're going to lose that freight? I may have to lay off people. I don't think that's what this body wants to do. And oh, by the way, the money that I'm making in gross revenue, a big part of my cost is paying for the infrastructure that I have to keep up. That's roadbed, ballast, cross ties, rail, and that has to be maintained on a yearly basis. And it's big money. And guess what? Everybody's costs have gone up. I buy diesel too, and it's gone up for me, just like it has everyone else. My insurance costs have gone up for me, just like they have for everyone else. And guess what? I have to pay more for my employees, just like everyone else. I'm not going to blame it on the Port of Savannah though. But it's a real issue. And I just want to encourage the committee members to not pick winners and losers. It's not what this legislature is for. I just want to help provide a wonderful environment for my businesses that I serve to thrive. And I think we all win because then jobs grow. We're the number one state to do business. And I'd like to keep it that way. So I urge you to vote no this afternoon, House Bill 496. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tarbutton. We got a couple questions for you if you do. Is that 10, Casey? Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I followed your business, and I think a lot of it, that's a really unique concept, and it's exciting. My question for you is, over the past 2 years, how's your business? What's the revenues on your business? How's your business been doing?
So 2020 was tough, right? Last year, things have bounced back. This year, it's kind of like we've been in a little bit of a fog, but we're seeing signs of life. So things are getting better. And everybody knows what's happened in the last 2 weeks. So that's thrown another cloak on things. So it seems like we take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So but I do think the trends are positive, but if oil prices stay at 130, all bets are off.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that was kind of my I guess my point is that, this has been going on under executive order for the past couple of years. And I wanted to hear that it's like significantly impacted your business or not significantly impacted your business. But yeah, I mean, it's been rough. 2020 and 21 have been tough for sure, but I appreciate you.
Thank you. Representative Thomas.
Actually, just got one quick question for you. How do you ship trees on rail?
So we have customers that bring in logs and then they're chipped up. So we chip the wood chips. Okay. And so this bill is, we're talking about logs, but it's forest products. So it can very easily turn into wood chips. And, I love Lee Lemke, but I mean, the kaolin mines hauled, that could easily turn into kaolin finished product. Where does it stop? Because last week, this bill was about forestry. Now it's about forestry. It's about agriculture. It's about chickens. So next week, it could be even more. So it's just, it's more and more weight and it's more and more products. And all it's going to do is take business off my railroad. And once you do that, the traffic just doesn't leave us. Guess what happens? It goes to truck. So there are more trucks on the road. So by raising limits, you're not taking trucks off the road. You're increasing truck traffic because you're taking the freight off the rails, and that increases the truck traffic.
Well, you and I both agree on one thing. It's hard not to love Lee Lemke. So thank you.
I want to bring his neck every now and then.
Thank you.
One more. Representative Williams, I believe. Oh, we got 2 more.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was sitting here listening and, there's an old African proverbs, when elephants fight, grass gets trampled. When I came to work in the legislature in 1975 with Zell Miller, Hugh Gillis was President pro tem of the Senate. The Talbot name was very well known. I'm enjoying this hearing as I'm getting to hear from 2 legendary figures in forestry business in Georgia, and I'm just enjoying these 2 elephants fight. At some point, somebody's gonna get some leverage under one, and I just want to be around, not close, but just around to see who falls. Good seeing you.
Thank you for that wisdom, Representative Williams. Appreciate you. Representative Singleton online.
Yes, sir. And I don't know if this presenter is the appropriate one to answer the question, but the the question came to my mind as he was presenting. So, talking about safety, I'm curious, is there anyone that's willing to testify to the numbers of, I'm assuming based on the presentation that we've seen a significant increase in accidents or problems because of the higher weights the last 2 years. So is there anyone that can answer that question or speak to that?
I don't know, but that's a good question. I'm sure somebody will appear probably to add. That's right. We do have our insurance man, Mr. Copeland. Well, you have to get to a microphone, Mr. Copeland. They'll be able to hear you. Thank you, Philip.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Yes, sir. We talked about that a minute ago, and historically for the last 20 years in forestry, it's still been the same 10.5 to 11.5 vehicles per year would have an accident. That has not changed. We don't have direct numbers for this past current year. It's too early, but in the previous year, there was no increased significance in the amount of claims.
Thank you. And you created a question from Representative Thomas.
So the quantity of claims, but let's talk about I guess the
severity.
magnitude of the
The
claims.
severity of claims
Yeah.
has, of course, gone up. Medical expenses have gone up. Cost of repair vehicles has gone up.
Yeah, but is that directly tied to the cost of inflation or is
Oh,
that
yeah.
directly tied to the severity of the accidents?
No, inflation.
Okay.
The weight, I don't ever see a weight issue claim or haven't in the last 2 years that were caused by the 95,000.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
One more. I don't know is this Mr. Hawley? Is this for Mr. Copeland or Mr. Tarbutton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming up multiple times. I think you're probably getting a little more exercise today than most times. I've been here and listening to both sides, and I really believe that everyone here really has a heart to those who've long been in the industry. Making sure that you are feeding your family is, especially in a time coming out of a pandemic, is rough. But I think I've heard a lot about families who are being impacted if their breadwinner was not able to continue with an increase in amount of truck weights. I'm wondering more so, not necessarily about those who may be injured by a tractor trailer that is overloaded. I'm wondering about the families that may be impacted by roadways would be severely damaged because of the increase of roads. Because I think really what might kill the effort, I don't have any kids, but I can imagine if I had I know you all may have a daughter or a niece or something. If one of them was to be injured by a collapsing bridge, something we all seen in Pennsylvania happen, I think that would gut the soul of a local community to the point that they would be in a tough place. They would not know what to do about it, but they would know that every day they'd see kind of a big heavyweights kind of coming across over the bridge. And so is it what impact from the side of an insurance specialist on your end have you seen about particularly road conditions that are become deteriorated over time in areas that see a great deal of truck traffic?
I'm not sure I know how to answer that question. I think that would be better directed to somebody with the road department.
Okay, but that's fine.
Georgia. Yes, sir.
Thanks for the attempt.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, Representative Singleton, you got your hand back up for which one?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's actually, I think you can answer it, because I think I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the dumb question, but I just want to make sure I fully understand it. And I know it was said a while ago, but I know it was said in this meeting. But let's say hypothetically, we didn't move this legislation forward, and when the executive order rolls back the weights, and all of a sudden we don't have a 90,000 pound limit for timber, there's still 105,000 pound trucks on the road, containerized trucks and other vehicles, correct? It's not, these are not the only vehicles that are at that weight limit. Is that correct? Or am I totally off base on that?
That's correct, Representative, but I think I'll hold that answer until we let Commissioner McMurray answer that. I think he'll be able to give us a description of what's going on along that line.
Awesome. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Look, and I acknowledge too, I mean, I acknowledge they're not all on the same roads. They're different roads are being used, and, you know, timber's coming from a different place in some of the containers, but I just want to make sure that we're all very clear on that point.
Okay, any other members? Okay, Ms. Kathleen Bowen.
Good afternoon, Kathleen Bone from ACCG. Happy to be back with you, and I'm glad you're having fun with this hearing. Yes. Okay, I'll reiterate 3 points that I've made previously. Just know that the federal DOT weight limit is 80,000 pounds. So these heavier trucks that we're talking about today are not allowed on the interstates. They're on our state and local roads and bridges. Those container trucks aren't coming out of the woods either onto dirt roads. So that's a completely different story, which I'm sure GDOT can address. But the ones we're talking about today are not on the interstates. They're on our local roads and our local bridges. And somebody asked about bridges. There are 1,200 bridges posted now, and 97% of those are on our local bridges. So we are very concerned about the number of bridges that would have to be posted if this bill were to move forward. It becomes a public safety issue if your fire truck can no longer go across a bridge. And it also bottlenecks traffic and makes routes longer for the general motoring traffic to benefit other industries perhaps, and not the citizens. The last point I'll make is that, remember, locals cannot enforce truck weights. That's left to the Department of Public Safety. I'll pause there to see if there are any questions. Oppose.
Number 28, I believe that's Mr. Corbett.
It's me. It's
Oh,
me.
Mathis, I'm sorry. I was
Yes,
looking at the
yeah.
wrong road.
Hey, Kath.
Hello, sir.
You said something about a fire truck going over a bridge. How many bridges where most of these trucks run? Where is there any bridges in those areas where that could happen?
I was texting counties today to try to get some real data for you on that. I did text one county, and they said that if this bill were to pass, there would be about 10 bridges in their county that would have to be posted, and fire trucks would not be allowed over them. That's just one county. That's just me doing quick text, firing it off to counties. I don't have that data.
Okay, follow up one question.
Absolutely.
We said the executive order or emergency executive order was put in what?
Almost 2 years ago?
Almost 2 years ago. So are these trucks going over those bridges now?
If they're posted, they shouldn't be.
Okay. So, but we not had an incident that you know of.
On a bridge, I'm
Yeah.
not aware of an accident on a bridge, but bridges are inspected every year
yeah.
by GDOT. So
Yeah.
there's bridges being posted on a yearly basis.
See, what I'm trying to get at is that have we had an issue with that in these areas where most of these trucks, now I'm not talking about, of course, there may be some mills in the metro area that I'm not aware of, but we haven't had any information where that's happened. Is that correct?
GDOT can provide maps of where all the posted bridges are, but remember, this is
Yeah,
not.
I understand that, but I mean, there's not been an incident where a big truck or farm truck or a big heavy cotton picker or a fire truck going on a counter. We haven't had any issue with that.
I don't have data on that. I just know GDOT inspects the bridges, and bridges are posted on a yearly basis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Watson.
This might be a better question for GDOT or if you mentioned the bridges.
I don't think it's picking. I don't think it's picking up. Would you slide over? Yeah.
That's 29.
And this may be better for GDOT, and because I know that we have bridges that get posted at 80,000, and basically they're constantly getting posted, I guess, throughout the year because of wear and tear at 80,000. And by adding additional, our state has had a lot of growth. And if we go to 90, that we're just talking about these bridges, instead of posting them in 10 years, we may be posting them in 5 years. Would that be appropriate or correct statement?
I'm sure it's a dynamic.
Yeah,
answer.
I mean, we're posting bridges every day. We're just gonna start posting them sooner.
And GDOT's doing a really good job on the bridge program. They are funding local bridge replacements that are at a higher standard. But we're talking about what's out there now, but GDOT is doing a really good job of getting those bridges at a higher standard.
Okay, Chairman Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman Jaspers. Couple questions. First, didn't we have a bill last year? You mentioned for the log truck or what it comes out of off dirt road and turns onto the county road, which tearing them up. Didn't we have a bill that Chairman Burchett passed last year that addressed that, where the counties could the loggers have to post a bond that would cover that issue?
Thank you for bringing that up, because it shows that we can work with Representative Burchett and that we can work with the Georgia Forestry Association. But guess what? Those conversations took over a year to get to that compromise language. But yes, it did increase the bond amount that can be, the county can call on for the egress ingress. And that did help. Yes.
Address that. The second question, where's the paper mill around this capital? Well, this is the worst roads in Georgia right here.
Just that one pothole going where we live. That's the one, isn't it?
Knock the shots out from under your car.
Any other questions for Miss Kathleen? See, no,
Thank you
thank you,
very much.
ma'am. Jake Tench.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be brief. I know we're kind of running up on time here, but I'm Jake Tench. I'm with Georgia Agribusiness Council. We represent kind of the whole gambit of agribusiness throughout this state. I know that much of the conversation has been about forestry, and I just want to make aware of the fact that this is extremely important for agriculture as well, and agribusinesses across the state. Our members are struggling with a lot of the same, basically all of the same issues that the previous people have testified about today. And we have had members reach out on this issue. I just want to say that these agribusinesses are the lifeblood of pretty much every rural community in this state. They are the employers, the taxpayers, and most of the time the ones that invest the most in those communities. And that all comes second to the fact that they supply the products that we rely on each and every day. And the products that we oftentimes take for granted. The problem is that we find ourselves in rare times, new times with new challenges, and the agribusinesses are struggling. We understand that this issue is very complex, but we also believe that this could be a simple solution that would go a long ways in the right direction to fixing some of those challenges that we see. Like I said, I want to be brief, but if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Excuse me. I see none. Thank you. Brian Tolar.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Brian Toller, representing the Georgia Urban Agriculture Council. We membership statewide. Large part of that is not only in maintenance, but installation of turf grass and ornamentals that all of us enjoy at our homes, where none of us are right now. We wish we were. Georgia is the number 4 state in the nation in sod production. And we do it because we're good at it. And the Georgia General Assembly invests heavily in the University of Georgia to help us be such a stellar state at producing those turf grasses. It's a lot of different types of turf grass, and that's the challenge for us. In the sod industry, in a truckload today, making sure we stay at 84,000 with the variance, then we're hauling about 18 pallets of sod per truck. We're not asking for much. We want to go, if we go to 90,000, then those trucks will be able to haul additional 3 or 4 pallets. It's not a lot. 3 or 4 pallets, bringing that grass, and most of which is not grown in the metro Atlanta area. As you know, there is
a couple of farms up in Bartow County, up around Cartersville. Great turf grass is grown up there. Most of it is grown in South Georgia. And most of that turf grass grown in South Georgia comes to Atlanta, or it goes to Jacksonville, or it goes to Tallahassee, or it goes to Mobile, or it goes to Birmingham. All those jobs require the opportunity to be able to move that product, and just be able to increase just a few pallets on that truck makes a difference. Just like we're talking about logging, just like we're talking about other ag commodities, poultry, all of these matter. And that there's not a single new structure that's built in the metro Atlanta area, which the census says we grew by 1 million people the last decade, right? 1 million people came to metro Atlanta, and they all had a house or an apartment or some structure that had to have a certificate of occupancy. In order to get that, you had to have landscape installed. There's a process here that seems like we keep looking at the individual concept and we're not moving it all the way through the process, y'all. I don't want to reiterate what everyone has said. That doesn't do us any good. But what I do want to focus on is there's economies of scale here for everyone has to meet. Now, for turf grass, we do have an advantage, supply and demand. Sod, if you're looking to buy sod this spring, God love you, you're going to pay for it. Supply is down. It takes a year to grow back that sod. You're going to pay for it. But there is a process that starts with how do we get those trucks, those drivers, those farm manufacturers, processors, all the pieces that go into it, they have to invest in that. And all we're looking for is economies of scale. The technology that we looked at, and Chairman Burchett, I appreciate what you've done, because we've talked a lot about the technology that we have for moving our product and for harvesting our product, but we haven't talked about the technology in the trucks that are moving that. And this bill focuses, the substitute focuses on the vehicles that are just like 7 years old. And that moves forward. And yeah, that gives our folks some consternation. We're not terribly excited about that because it's going to cut some people out. They're going to have to buy some new trucks. Good for the truck people. But this bill is exceedingly fair. The last time I spoke, I talked about we're at 80,000. We have a 5% variance, right? Johnny Floyd. We talked about South Georgia. We talked about friends down around Cordele. Johnny Floyd was the one that was fighting for that truck weight increase. And we wanted to go to 88,000 20 years ago. And what did we do? We came up with a compromise with DOT, and we got a 5% variance that got us to 84. Technology's changed a lot, y'all. Economies of scale are different now. Inputs are very different now. The labor market is very different now. We used to talk about having a 10% unemployment rate. Good Lord, we got 2.3, I think, last time I checked, and we still have 220,000 jobs that can't be filled. This isn't a hard, it's an arbitrary number. 84,000 is an arbitrary number. Moving to 90,000 is not going to change the world in a negative way. We have a 95,000 executive order right now that clearly seems to be working pretty well. The challenge for us is being able to not just keep these folks in business. That shouldn't be the job. And yeah, we pick winners and losers every day. Every day, every bill that passes is a winner and loser bill. Maybe it's for the taxpayer. Maybe it's for the DOT. Those are taxpayer dollars too, right? They do a great job with our money. And we're grateful for that. Thank you for that. Because if you don't do your job, then we can't do ours. I'll leave you with this. I said it last time. If we do what we did, we get what we got. We have to do better, and we are doing better. We're doing better in so many ways, except the industries that are speaking here today don't have a chance to do better because we're hung up on an arbitrary number. Let's fix the number. Let's make it exceedingly fair, like what this bill does. And I'll leave you with this. I'm glad there's so much love for Lee Lemke. He's my roommate. And y'all made him really happy. You know, there's a lot of love there. There's a lot of love there. So let's leave on a message of love, because he's a good guy, and I agree with y'all. And let's leave on a message of helping Georgia continue to grow and improve for the businesses that make it so sustainable, not just in the rural areas, but also in the urban areas. And we need your help. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. Copeland, you were the last one I wrote down. You want to say anything else? I'm just teasing you. Thank you, committee, and next up is our Commissioner, Russell McMurray. I don't think anybody in this room sitting up here or down there doesn't respect the job that Commissioner does in the roads of Georgia, the bridges and transit and everything that he touches. And Commissioner, I just want you to know that we appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the
And we sort of
opportunity.
appreciate Josh.
Well, that's
but
good.
no.
I'm glad you sort of appreciate him and
No, we're teasing.
the other 3,599 employees of the department, because they are who get it done. Now,
Yes, sir.
I wanted to just start with Representative Williams' proverb of elephants. And so I had to have watched elephants spar today, but I'm here to talk about the grass that is being trampled. So thank you for that analogy. Let me too also acknowledge Representative Burchett. I do appreciate the business-like manner, the way we can sit down and have thoughtful, meaningful dialogue of the facts. And of course, our facts of those of infrastructure. And I appreciate you acknowledging too that I am actually a tree farmer. My dad was a forester. So I really have a great appreciation for the forest products industry. And as I told Representative Burchett, I'm probably the most favorable DOT commissioner of the forest products industry you may ever have. And I sincerely mean that. And so I appreciate the passion, the information shared as it relates to the industry of not only forest products, but all the great agricultural products you've heard today, because that is Georgia's #1 economy. And that's not lost on us. As you heard from Kathleen from ACCG, our focus is not only on state routes, but county roads, city streets, because we all are about Georgia's economy as a whole. It's been said of leadership that the first thing you have to do is acknowledge your reality. That reality has been acknowledged today by the extraordinary economic times that we live, and especially of this last week or 2 weeks now, that has seen things happen like we've never seen in a very, very long time, and maybe not even generationally. So I just ask for this Transportations Committee acknowledgement when deliberation that we don't lose sight of the long term, of which I'm focused on as the responsible party to deliver infrastructure, not only for today, but for decades into the future when you deliberate, because these are real issues. These are real impacts to livelihoods of Georgians today, and that's not lost on me at all. And for the record, we have the same labor issues everyone has acknowledged today. We're hiring at Georgia Department of Transportation. Love to have you. Anybody online? Apply online, please. This bill gives me great concerns, as you can imagine, because we do have to strike that balance of taking care of Georgia's infrastructure while we still want to maintain the state's rating of the #1 state to do business. You heard from Andreas that, our forest products are #1 in the nation as far as what we export, and what we do is our #2 economy, if you've heard as well. So we certainly acknowledge that, but let me share with you some thoughts for deliberation. We often talk about the competitive advantage, and Georgia is extremely competitive. We want to make sure we stay competitive as well. You have some information, I believe, in front of you about weights, gross vehicle weights. Well, what you need to understand too, and Meg Perkle, our chief engineer, gave this presentation about a year ago now, is that we have the highest axle loading of our states around us, with the variances and then the scale variances you get. So you have gross vehicle weight, which really matters to a bridge because it's got to hold up all the weight. And you got loads on axles. And again, we outpace our neighbors as far as a maximum load that is allowed on each axle. And of course, those variances increase that as I'll have to go back and talk to Johnny Florida at our next board meeting, remind him of what he did back there. But again, we found our way forward. The one thing I would say in counter to a little bit about technology of trucks, and thank goodness for technology in trucks that drive improved safety, but physics hadn't changed. Weight is weight. Mr. Newton hadn't changed any laws of physics that I'm understanding. So that's what we're talking about, is it impacts the weight. So
In fact, we are very competitive when it comes to axle loading as it compares to our other states. And I'll come back at the end and sort of tell you how we compare infrastructure wise to our surrounding states as well, because we do very well. Now, this increased weight, and we've been operating under executive order. And let me just say, that is the precise reason for executive orders. When there are certain impacts that nobody can foresee, certainly as the pandemic had been, and hopefully thought we were coming out of that, but now we're in another economic situation that nobody foreseen. So the executive order certainly has provided certain benefit. So it does seem logical that, well, why couldn't we continue that? And what would that mean because of the increased efficiency that has been talked about today? But I want to go back and share with you some data that we did. And you're right, Representative Corbett, I don't believe there's a mill nearby that's causing that pothole. But we did do an analysis of 155 forest product mills around the state and looked at how many of those bridges are load restricted. That's when we say posting, it means that that bridge cannot carry the weight, just as Representative Watson, Chairman Watson talked about. We've got bridges today that can't carry the 80,000 pounds. Okay, so we did an analysis of the 155 forest product mills around the state. There were 275 bridges that cannot hold up the legal load today. If we look at what this bill recommends, that number will go from 275 to probably closer to 850 bridges that will have to be posted within 10 miles of the mill. So we're talking about as you leave the forest, as you leave whatever commodity you're hauling and you're getting to the mill within 10 miles, I mean, you're getting down to a pretty tight circle that you'll have over 850 bridges that legally you can't go across. A variance does not matter on a posted or load restricted bridge. The weight is the weight. You don't get a variance on that. As Kathleen mentioned from ACCG, that's a lot more bridges that have to be enforced as well, and only Motor Carrier Compliance Division does that. So there's a little bit of this misunderstanding that the efficiency gained, because now you're going to have to drive further, maybe significantly further, to bypass those load restricted bridges that are now totaling 850 plus or minus. The reason I say plus or minus is it takes a while to do these calculations. And so I'm rounding. The number we had before was more like 1,000, but I rounded it down a little bit just to be conservative. So posting is posting. Now, let's be economic competitive. And I've told Representative Burchett, this is a business proposition. So the business would be, how do we get rid of these load restricted bridges so that we could haul heavier weights? And the number is not arbitrary compared, as our last speaker said. They are engineered numbers, so they're not arbitrary. So I looked at the 850 bridges and conservatively said, in what kind of prices we're seeing today, we'll just apply $4 million to replace a bridge. Some bridges are 2 to 3 million, some are 6 to 8. It depends on the bridge. We'll just say 4 million. So that's only $3.4 billion to get that 10-mile radius from a mill so that there's no restrictions. Now that's just within 10 miles. We ultimately post probably additional 1,000 bridges. Okay, meaning that's 1,000 bridges that heavier loads cannot go across. You heard from Kathleen a number about 1,200 and something. Well, I've got news for you. So the question is, well, they've been operating with heavier loads. What does that really mean? We just got our numbers in today that we've increased about 200 more bridges that had to be posted since last year. Is that directly attributable to increased weights? I can't tell you that, but we've had to increase 200 more because bridges are just like all of us. We're all very unique and we all have our own health issues, right? You can't look on the outside, and when you look at that bridge and I look around this room, you know, I can't guess the meds that you may be on, but I'll take blood pressure medicine. I might take an extra one tonight. Cholesterol medicine. I've got a couple of bad knees from my motorcycle racing days, but you can't tell all that. And you can't tell it when you look at the bridge. But as we look at those situations, and especially as we look at the posted bridges, and Kathleen's right, the highest percentage by far of load restricted bridges that are not designed to carry today's load. In fact, 70% of the bridges on city and county streets are not designed to carry the legal weights that we have today. Okay, so that's a big impact. So there's roughly 8,000 local bridges. So the biggest impact here for increased loads will be on local roads, of which our first priority are interstates and state routes. We have done a good job, and I acknowledge this body as the Transportation Committee in our House appropriations, who've done a great job to fund transportation over the last years to work on bridges. The other thing with this bill gives me a little concern. While it talks about 90,000 and we acknowledge the step down and move toward negotiation, Representative Burchett, we appreciate that. With a 2.5% increase, what I don't see is what's over in 32.628, I believe, 26, which is the variance code itself. It wasn't clear to us that it's not a 2.5% variance and a 5% variance on top of that, which puts you up about 97,000 pounds. So that's a little bit of a concern I'd ask for your deliberation on as well as you look at that. And again, there's a scale variance too that MCCD looks like. So as we think about these bridges, I appreciate the knowledge of a sunset, but the damage will be done, and it will take significant resources to try to replace. You can rehab, but it's like me getting a knee replacement. I'm still going to be 50 something years old. I may have a good knee, but the rest of me still 50 something years old. Appreciate y'all thinking I'm 50. So 50 something. Yes, I am. The other part about the acknowledgement of truck technology, again, I'm a believer in technology and vehicles for truck safety. Absolutely. Technology and vehicles are making things a lot safer. We did see about a 4% uptick in commercial vehicle fatalities last year. I can't contribute that directly to increased weight or forest products or any of these products. That's just the numbers that somebody asked. We did see fatalities jump significantly last year as well as a whole. So that's a concern. And let me just look at this again. The sunset, like I talked about, I'm talking about on the 7-year truck, appreciate that acknowledgement, but from an enforcement point of view, I don't have a trained eye to say that's what model, especially a tractor trailer is. That's sort of hard to identify for an enforcement point of view. And let me conclude with this and open it up for some questions and answers. You've heard that we're the number one in forest products, as we want Georgia to continue to be. You've heard a lot about labor, and that's something that is certainly of now. I would always like to say, this too shall pass. I wished we all knew when that would be, but when we're talking about bridges that are generally have been designed for 50 years and they don't meet the standard of the day, increasing the weights will further degrade them exponentially. As Chairman Watson mentioned, yes, we will be posting more bridges faster because the deterioration is going to be accelerated. And despite my friends at Georgia Tech, what they may have in their study is, I'm not a Georgia Tech engineer, I am a professional engineer, but there's an exponential component to weight when you look at pavement designs and bridge deterioration. So it's not necessarily linear. So we'd look forward to reviewing that report when we get it as it relates to the poultry commodities. So Mr. Chairman, let me just stop there with my thoughts and ramblings and be glad to entertain any questions. And thank you all for your deliberation in this matter. Again, I just appeal to you to not just think about what we're in the now, which is unprecedented. And I certainly have an appreciation of that, and I'm glad the executive order is in place for which it's working and doing good purpose. The recent suspension of motor fuel tax to try to curb these impacts. So I appreciate the wisdom of that, and know that that's certainly the right thing to do for Georgia. And just to ask that you think about, as we think about our transportation infrastructure for the very long term. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your wisdom. Mr. Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Commissioner McMurray. You always provide us the grand scale of things that we may not have contemplated. I was just kind of curious. I know probably one of the previous sheets we got, you kind of made mention to about $200 million and the federally supplied bipartisan infrastructure law money that would come. And I know that particularly we're looking at, of course, for state roads and bridges, how impactful it is, but for local roads, I know many times communities, whether it's going to be, money to be available there or through their own local SPLOST money, do you find that in terms of what is being provided, at least from the SPLOST advantage, as well as even from any federal monies there, that a local government may be able to take care of those post bridges, to be able to, undergird them enough to where perhaps if that money is made available this time, that for a bill that is at least positive for the growth of the industry, as Representative Burchett has provided, maybe that money could, maybe this is a good bill for a future time after that money is applied? What's your opinion?
Thank you for that question. The bipartisan infrastructure law to Georgia, we received the lowest federal share allocated to any state because our bridges were in better condition than our peer states. So that's good news, bad news, and that's reflective of the investment that we've made as a state in leveraging some local dollars, SPLOST dollars. The T-SPLOST counties, the TIA regions have certainly made gains in investment. I refer you to the American Society of Civil Engineers does an infrastructure report. Since HB 170 has gone into place, we've been investing about $420 million a year into bridges across the state. We moved our condition level from a C- to a C+. So the $225 million articulated in the IIJA or bipartisan infrastructure law is nowhere close to commensurate with the needs that this state has. It is certainly welcomed. We're certainly going to use it. There's a provision for the most local of local bridges, meaning that the route is not identified as a federal route. There's a lot of designation that it can be 100% federal, and we're certainly going to apply that. $225 million. It's probably, when it breaks down to about $45 million a year, 10 to 15 bridges. So it's not it's a big number, but it doesn't move the needle. And as the example I gave you, in this case, we'd move within that 10-mile area of a forest products to 850 bridges posted, costing about $3.4 billion. You see the math. In fact, that's about our budget for the entire year to do everything.
Thank you. It would be nice to, something that we don't see, and I don't know if it's possible. I know all of us appreciate your work. It'd be something to see if those industries that rely on the roads so much would actually to hear in terms of how beneficial do they see to put a support on actually build out of those roads or the maintenance of them, if in order to see their own industries continue. But
correct, and it's a lot of tie to economic development. Obviously, keeping good road conditions drive down user cost. Georgia is ranked very highly for lower road user costs due to wear and tear. Same thing for bridges. Ultimately, I'd love to not even have to have this conversation that all our bridges were strong enough to hold up, whatever you pick the weight, 100,000 pounds. But the reality is we're just nowhere close to that at this moment.
Let's move over to Mr. Thomas.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here today. I got a sheet from the Georgia Forestry Association, and I noticed that the gross vehicle weight without the variance is consistently 80,000 pounds across every state in the Southeast.
That's the federal weight limit.
That's because that's the federal weight limit. So I've also heard that there's a lot of containerized freight that leaves the port and travels. Now, why can you get away with 100-something thousand pounds on that, but not?
Yeah, so great question. And I meant to follow up on that. So the federal government does allow an exemption for containerized freight that where the seal has not been broken. So coming off of the ship, going to where it's going to be broken down, or leaving wherever the generator is, going directly to the port that goes right on the container. Our understanding, this data may be a little bit dated, but this is a very small proportion of the trucks that come in and out of the Port of Savannah. I believe the number is less than 2% of the gate moves that are truly at 100,000. So it's a small amount. And you might say, well, the bridges can hold it up. Correct. The bridges have been holding up the exemption that we have today, but the deterioration rate is going to go exponential. Like I said, we just added 200 bridges within the last year. I expect those numbers to continue to go up because the weight is fatigue of the bridges. They weren't designed to carry that. The interstate system wasn't designed to carry that. It's allowable as part of global commerce or U.S. commerce, which keeps us globally competitive. But that is an allowance. But those are, again, most of those are not hitting the local roads, the county roads. They're going to the interstate, and usually a freight distribution center is geographically close to an interstate.
Actually, that was going to be my follow-up question. My other question is, we have this variance that seems to vary quite a bit by state to state. Why are some states allowing more variances than others? I mean, how is that figured into the whole?
I can't speak to the other states. Again, these are, you're looking at the loadings. You start with the federal formula. There's a federal bridge formula that's used for every state uses that formula to determine the capacity of bridges and what they can hold. And I think, again, as you can see, Georgia, and I might add this too, this bill is about forest products today, but you've heard from a lot of other testimony that when you open this door, and I know this committee to be fair and just, I don't think you can just talk about one commodity without talking about them all. So you can see that we have a series of commodities in 32.26, I believe it is, that give those variances. And I think it's from this legislative body over the years, going back to the 80s, as you just heard, of trying to make sure that we keep Georgia moving forward. But it comes with consequences.
So, do you mind if I ask one more?
Oh, please go ahead.
Yes, sir.
So what I've heard is a lot of times these variances are put in because, and to speak to Chairman Pritchett's answer when he first gave his testimony, it had to do with, well, the logs get wet and they sit and soak, and so we need to have this variance in. But what state, from what I'm seeing here, there's not one state that would meet what we're asking for right now in this bill, or what's being asked in this bill at 92,500 pounds with that variance, because it sounds like I've heard the poultry folks talk about 84,000 pounds and filling it to that level. So it seems like to me that variance is still kind of used. Is that, I mean, typically if I can load a truck to 92.5, I'm gonna load a truck to 92.5. Is that correct?
Well, I would hope the industry would be on the conservative side, but there are very variability due to the things we've talked about, mainly moisture in general, but also they have the ability to weigh themselves too. You can scale yourself. But the variances for the other states sort of hard to talk to. We have the most variance though. This state has the most variance as it comes to axle weight. And again, that's where the rubber proverbially meets the road on axle weight. And then again, but the total gross vehicle weight does matter for the bridge formula. It's a little, pavements and bridges are oranges and tangerines. They're not quite the same. Not quite apples and oranges, but the way the designs work and the way you calculate distress.
All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thanks for being here. Quick question. Do you happen to know what, we talked about the percentage of trucks leaving the port at 100,000 pounds. Do you have any information on maybe what's leaving the ports at 90,000 pounds or 95,000 pounds?
Not off the hip. I'm sorry. We can try to get with GPA and see.
Yeah, I mean, and is there, I mean, where are you? Is there any hope that there could be conversation at 90,000 pounds weight and with no variance? Is there any movement at all on that number?
Sir, I'm not here to negotiate. I'm just telling you the facts of what the impacts will be. And the impacts are large and costly for the very long term. So, and as Representative Burchett said, is, you know, same question. Hey, I love to negotiate. You should come with me to buy a car, but that didn't go so good the last time either. But this is something that, from our point of view, we're just giving you the facts of what the impacts are, you know, and the concern that we have that we've made a lot of progress. Matter of fact, the American Road and Transportation Builders ranks us 47th out of the nation. You want to, 50 is the best. Our neighboring states are worse than that because they have higher gross vehicle weights and we have higher axle weights. I've just told you that. But we compete very well. We want, again, as I said, we'd love to have no vehicle or bridge restrictions or that worried about county roads falling apart with weights. Then we could truly be competitive. But it takes billions to get there. And if there's a return on investment to business discussion that this body would like to have with the Appropriations Committee, that you could find an extra $4 billion, we can get after it. Mr. Chairman, I'm open for that discussion anytime you'd like to get with the appropriations.
Chairman Carpenter is right with you, baby. Okay, next we'll go to Mr. Mathis.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you for being here. Just one question. I might have missed this. How did we get set at 84,000 to start with? And then
that it really goes back to design standards and design. And that's one thing about bridges. Over time, the average age of the bridge in Georgia, I may put Josh on spots, like 43 years old. They were designed to last 50 years. And if you go back, and I appreciate Mr. Representative Williams left talking about shortwood, you know, I used to talk about a Coble milk truck with a winch on the back, right, on shortwood. The design standards vehicles have changed over time. The design standards for the bridges. So that 80,000 is based on the national bridge formula for what bridges were designed to. Now, designs we do today, we do try to design to 100,000 and try to design for a longer bridge life. But the new bridges, like I said, the average age is 42, 43. The newer bridges that were designed in we're talking about the bridges designed in the 2000s that are to those standards. So anything really in the 1990s and earlier were not designed to those standards.
yes, sir. So you're saying to me now that, can I have a follow-up?
Oh, yes, sir.
All the bridges we're going to build now, whether they be local or state bridges, they're going to meet the 100,000.
No, I can't say that. I'd say state route bridges, local governments designed to whatever they want to for scales of economy.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they are designed to lesser standard. They are designed to the current design standard, but it may be for a low volume road, which would not be designed to 100,000 pounds for sure.
Yeah, I was just concerned because if we start allowing, let's just say we raise the rates at some point, which I hope we do. If we get the rates where off on the state routes are good, okay, and then we in a county or local situation where the bridge is not satisfactory to carry that weight, I get a little concerned about that too. So, you know, you talked about building bridges a minute ago. I know they all do. We have one in my county right now that's being redone, but I want us to build a bridge somewhere right here, Commissioner, with these businesses, because that really, it pains me that they're going through what they're having to go through. And I know it does you too. And I know you got a job, you got what you got to do, but we gotta find a way to make something work for this. And if it does have to raise this weight a little bit and maybe keep some trucks off some of those bridges that are not good, we're just gonna have to tell them. So I just want to say that, and I appreciate you being here today for that information.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I want to thank the department. They've been very good and helpful in my rural district. But this kind of goes to the tax relief that we're getting. I'm very grateful. People of Georgia need that relaxation on our taxes on gas right now. But I want to make sure it's not going to hurt any ongoing projects. I think they're probably budgeted, but how's it going to affect your budget in the future, or is that an unknown yet?
So as I understand it, you're counting that our FY23 budget will not be impacted. As you recall, the excise collected today is appropriated into the next year. So
Right.
this impact would be, would potentially could be the impact into 23. I don't expect that to be the case. I'm hoping that our appropriators in one of your previous roles was our Transportation Subcommittee, and you have a great appreciation of this. I'm hoping that we don't see that impact. But to answer to today's projects that are ongoing, there's no impact there. Those projects are funded, and when we sign a contract, we back that contract and make sure the project will be seen to fruition. That's the easy answer. The complication is the bipartisan infrastructure law has not been fully funded. There's an omnibus bill that should be passed hopefully by no later than Monday, that would then appropriate the federal projects. Without that, we will certainly have to slow down moving projects forward.
Okay, thank you. I was concerned about that big budget from Washington also, but thank you very much for what y'all do and how well you spread those dollars out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Vice Chairman.
Commissioner, how are you?
Good, Mr. Chair.
Good. I was going to make a joke about you no longer needing a nuclear stress test if you made it through this. But I think I'm more concerned with your mental well-being if you enjoy negotiating car sales. But no, thanks for being here, and certainly thank you for working with Chairman Burchett on this. I know it's a tough topic. I mean, we mentioned last week when we were hearing this before. What these guys do for our state and the economic driver, it's meaningful, significantly meaningful, and just continue to thank them for being here and what GDOT does for our state. I did want to clarify or ask a few questions. You mentioned the 200 bridges that you just mentioned today. On average, how many more bridges get posted a year? Is there a number? Is there an average we kind of see? Is that on par with what we would see in a normal year? Because every year there's going to be a certain number of bridges that age out. So I'm just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, good question. And I don't know that I can answer explicitly. This was a big jump up. We usually see it tick up, 10 or 20, some come off, we replace. So you got bridges that come off because we're replacing them. And then you got some coming on because they age, the deterioration and everything. I don't recall, and we'll fact check this later and get back to you, but I don't recall seeing that many number move up in 1 year and I've been tracking this for a number of years now. We've been steadily in that 1200 to 1200 area for a long time because we were, replacing bridges, and then those come back on. But the other part of that is that those birthdays I was talking about is 50-year, the closer you get to 50-year life cycle, you're going to see more and more come on because that we're reaching that point now. As we move in the time continuum to the right, you're moving much more of those bridges that are become 50 years that have basically exceeded their design life.
Okay. And with that, I mean, obviously that takes time and resources to get through even posting those 200. And I know there's conversations about the bridges that are currently, under par with the 95 that we're operating under now. Are those bridges posted at this point, or how long does that, what kind of process does that take?
It's our crystal ball didn't work too good. Technically, we probably should post them. Obviously, we thought COVID would be a little shorter run than we would have thought. And now where we are with the economy is something different. Technically, they probably should be posted because we're worried about that acceleration of deterioration. We haven't done that. And it will have to be a decision that we make at some point. We'll see where that goes. But yeah, so we haven't done that.
Thank you for that. I actually just want to echo what Representative Mathis said. I had it written down here too. You know, the foresight of if 20 years ago we were talking about this same subject, I foresee us continuing to talk about the subject regardless of what happens on this specific matter. Just the thought process of continuing to beef up some of that engineering, if we know that that's even on the horizon, take into consideration potentially the increasing of the design of those bridges so that we might be able to go to a higher weight in the future and alleviate some of these concerns. Just kind of wanted to echo that. And really, is there, and I know that you guys have talked, and I know that there was kind of an amendment to this to drop it back down to 90 from the original suggested 95. Is there a number that makes GDOT more comfortable?
80,000 works perfectly. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Thanks for asking. Sorry. But again, listen, you're the policymakers. We're the implementers. So I really don't want to opine on, there's a number. I'm just telling you, here's the situation. But the situation is billions of dollars of impact. And again, I don't think and again, extraordinary times. Thank goodness for the things that are in place now. But long-term, this is a long-term conversation. And then again, if there's a return on investment discussion that can be had and there's appropriations that we can drive these down, it makes a lot of sense, and we can maintain our global competitiveness. Evidently, we've talked about it since 1988. I wasn't at DOT then, but we're still number one. So it's been we've still been able to maintain that. We want to continue to maintain that. And as long as I have the opportunity, we're still going to invest in not only state-owned bridges, but local-owned bridges as well. Because if you've heard me talk about to other folks, I always talk about the rural bridge is just as important as the interstate bridge out there, because our number one business economy is agriculture. And so, we're going to need to continue to make those investments.
Well, we appreciate you and we appreciate what you're doing. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, sir.
Chairman Watson. I don't know what's going on there. There you go.
Thank you. Commissioner, when a bridge is posted today at the 80,000 number, what is that when it's posted? Does that mean that if you can't go over it, is 50,000 the weight limit? Or if it gets posted, it's at 80,000. So it's posted now, you can only go across that bridge if you're 50,000. I guess my question is, if we would go to the 90 and the bridges 800 more get posted, what is that limit posted to? Is it, at 50
yeah.
or, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So the posting, so legal limits, if the bridge will hold up the legal limit of 80,000, there's no signs. And when we say posting, it's literally placing the sign out in advance of the bridge. But what the weight limits are will vary. You'll see a picture of the vehicle type, and it's basically the axle configuration. If it's a tractor trailer, if it's a 5-axle combo unit, and it'll have different weights because we have to go in and calculate what the original bridge was designed at, what it was supposed to hold, which a lot of them, the ones that are currently posted now, were not designed for 80,000, especially on the county systems and the city routes. You start there and then you start deducting because the condition of the bridge, the wear and the tear of the bridge, corrosion, concrete that is not solid and sound is more. So they have to go out, take the inspections, take the calculation, and then back down. And I will say several years ago, we worked with the forestry industry to go out and put gauges on the bridges to see if they corresponded to what we calculated. And some of them we were able to say, hey, we can raise the weight back up a little bit. Some of them we said, whoa, we need to lower it down a little bit. And so, but it's that a calculation bridge engineers have to calculate based on the deterioration of the bridge, the inspections they do. And these inspections are very thorough. They look at every element of the bridge, including even underwater. We have divers that do underwater analysis of foundations. And so it's very much an engineered process, but that ends up to your question is how much weight by vehicle type of truck can cross that bridge.
So they could all be different.
It can
There's
vary,
no-
yeah, because it does matter.
So just by raising it to 95 doesn't mean you'd post it, or 90 and you could post it and drive a 80,000 pound vehicle across it.
Yeah, you'll end up posting a lot more bridges, at least 1,000.
Representative Thomas.
I was looking at old engineering quotes and I found this one, and this whole conversation actually reminded me of it. It says, any idiot can build a bridge that stands, but it takes an engineer to build a bridge that barely stands. And I think the point here is we use weight limits. You use certain things to design these bridges, and they're designed and you can't go over those amounts. And that's constantly be reevaluated. And that's why these posted bridges continue to have to be looked at. And one of the other concerns that I've had that actually Chairman Watson brought up is if we post these bridges, maybe currently there might be commerce traffic driving over these bridges that may not be able to use them anymore after they're posted. Is that correct?
Very much so. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. What the executive order has now would prohibit going across those bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Last question, Mr. Singleton.
Oh, I certainly don't want to be last. Mr. Chairman and Mr. Commissioner, thanks for the time. My only question is, I want to make sure that we get that we understand as a committee what your estimation is. Let's say this legislation does pass in some form or fashion. What's going to be the long-term cost, your estimated year-over-year cost? Because what we're talking about is, as the wear and tear goes up, that means the interval between maintenance goes down and the maintenance cost goes up. And I know you don't have a fixed number. I know everything in your world is not based on fixed numbers. It's all intelligent swag. But do you have an intelligent swag number for us and for Chairman Perkle and the appropriations side as to what the fiscal impact of this would be?
That would take some work. I mean, it really, I gave you just cost to replace to get rid of the load restrictions of just in the 10-mile radius being, 3.4 billion. So when you look at the entire system, it would be a bigger number than that. But as far as deterioration rates and curves, it's complicated because you have the increased weight, but then also you've got the normal degradation of just the bridges are aging out and that need to be replaced, as we talked about just a moment ago.
Right. And just so I'm clear, what I mean is, based on the testimony we received today, the way I'm viewing it, and if this is an oversimplified or stupid way of looking at it, correct me. But let's say it's that 3.4 billion at the 80,000 pounds is on a 10-year cycle. Maybe that 3.4 billion is now going to be on a 7.5-year or 5-year cycle. That'd be an accurate way of saying it. In other words, we still have to pay the cost to replace these things. Just the life cycle is going to be smaller.
Yes, indeed. We'd have to look at that, and it would be pretty accelerated.
Thank you, Mr. Singleton. I have to say thank you. I know you moved some meetings to be here today, and we appreciate you. And thank you for being here. And, Chairman Wiedhour's comments about blood pressure, I might need mine too. But thank you, Russell.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you all for your due consideration.
Okay. Now back to our bill sponsor, Chairman Burchett. Excuse me.
Thank you again, committee and chairman, for hearing this issue. Thanks to everybody in the audience. It's starting to get a little long-winded. I feel it myself. So I'm not going to take up too much time. And I said that at the beginning, and I really mean it this time. We've talked a lot about bridges. I know bridges are an issue, but as I see it, if you post a bridge, you can't drive over it. And the industry, I've asked them, because after my conversation with the Commissioner Mcmurray, I said, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to move these weights up? They're saying it will post all these new bridges and you'll have to drive around, spend, increase the trip between the mill and the woods. Are you sure you want this? and the response was a resounding, we don't have a choice. We have to have this. I have to take everybody that comes to me at their word, and I do that. And sometimes it's bit me, but I really believe that there was a time when this was a luxury to put more money in their pockets. Right now, this is a necessity. They are telling me the second largest industry, and this started as a forestry issue for me, but it grew into an ag issue, which it should. And by the way, this bill narrows the industries that can use the extra weight outside of the executive order. Everybody right now is driving at 95,000 pounds, every industry. But I really believe these industries are hanging on by a thread. There's no doubt to me that that's the case. I appreciate everybody's back and forth. Again, I respect the commissioner entirely, and what he's doing for the state, there's no doubt is working. But I go back to the idea that our job as policy makers are to determine the growth or help the growth of this state. If what we are doing is hindering that growth, we need to come up with a plan that allows our industries to grow, our two largest industries in the state to continue to grow. If that means we have to appropriate more funds, then we have to do that for the bridges. One thing that is glaring to me is that we've been operating for 2 years. And then before that, we've been operating every time there are unprecedented events, and we have not posted bridges. And so for me, this has been a learning experience. I thought the bridges were posted based on their construction, but it sounds to me like a bridge can be suitable one day, and then 10 years from now, that's not suitable. So every bridge perceivably can be posted at some point in this state for any weight. It's our job to continue to maintain these bridges. It's our job to build these roads. We haven't talked much about roads. We've talked mainly about bridges. We haven't talked much about roads. We talked about local roads, but we haven't talked about the deterioration of these roads. I submit to you that as we grow, particularly in UV vehicles, I just looked it up right here. A Tesla weighs twice as much as a Camry. These weights are just increasing for passenger vehicles. That is going to consistently get, more wear on the roads, on the bridges, and everything else. We just have to move with it. And I appreciate again, Mr. Chairman, for you bringing this to committee, and to continue this conversation. I'm open to any suggestions the committee or committee members have. I'm not blind to the fact that this is tough for each and every one of you. So after this, please come to me and tell me where you are and where I can help with this issue. I would like to continue this conversation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. As we're talking, I just want to thank Mr. Gillis, Mr. Hooks, Mr. Tarbutton, Mr. Copeland. The rest of us are supposed to be here. You four are citizens that come to tell us your story, and I sure appreciate you guys, sitting there right together. Appreciate you a lot. My goal in this has been to try to move this discussion. I think those of y'all who know me, have been around me a lot, knows that's what I try to do. I just try to move it and keep pushing. And, this discussion, this has probably been the most fair discussion that I've heard of this so far. Because, although, me, I love agriculture and I'll do anything for it. I spent my life in that business too. Fortunately, Governor Kemp has seen this too. He's got the executive order that's helping us, the fuel tech exemption. We're also working, this committee is, and behind the scenes on a freight and logistics funding package. That's going to be our role next year to work on. It's going to be big. And we'll need it. But this is what we've got to do to address part of these issues. Very educational. I appreciate it. We've heard a lot. Let's get right down to it. I'm not going to accept a motion to do pass right now. I'm just not. I hope you see the emotion I have. Woke up last night thinking about this. Talked to Burchett this morning. We've got to do something, guys. I don't know what it is. I don't know how we're going to get there. We've got to support these folks. And we're not right there yet. I think there's some work that needs to be done on other people in the legislature besides this fine committee. I mean, you guys have sat here for 2 hours and we've listened. You've listened attentively to the both sides. But I think those of us who support this issue need to make sure we spend our time talking to our seatmates and making sure they understand what's going on here, whether you're for or against it. And if you're against it, that's fine too. But maybe we can find, as Chairman Mathis or Representative Mathis said, find a way to get this done. So my door is always open. You know what? I've got a great office down there. I'd love to have you talk to me as we search this forward. And I thank you for your attendance time. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.